Hello, folks, and welcome back to this week's episode of Ambassador Talk. My name is Chief Master Sergeant Jason David. This week, we have the absolute pleasure of linking up with Christian Vega. He is an Air Force Wounded Warrior Ambassador and an alumni of this group. Welcome aboard, Christian. How are you?
Thank you, Chief, for having me here. It's a real honor.
Hey, definitely appreciate you not only being brave enough to share your story, but wanting to engage with a character like myself. I think this is going to be a pretty interesting and educational webcast for the folks that are tuning in. So, Christian, question for you: how did you get here?
So it's actually interesting how I got here. I got here through the morning casualty report. So what happened was that part of my story is that when that day that I had my injury, I called my mom. I'm like, Mom, today's my day off. I'm gonna go to the cafeteria, then I'm gonna go to the gym. I'll call you back later. And that was the last phone call I made because when I went to the cafeteria, I fainted right then and there. They took me to a military hospital. They saw what I had was so grave. They took me to hospital off base. And what had happened was that I suffered a brain aneurysm. But not just any, mine was the most severe because mine was inoperable. It was in the center of my brain. So all they can do was put 2 tubes on each side of my head to drain out the blood.
So
Yeah.
that's crazy, right? And so in that process, you were probably scared. You probably felt a bit alone, especially since you had probably never met anyone who had gone through this. Yeah.
Actually, it's actually interesting, but I was not even conscious when it happened. I was in a coma for 1 month. The people who felt it was my supervisors and my coworkers and my parents because they called my mom as soon as it happened. They're like, "Ma'am, how quickly can you come up here?" And my mom was like, "Wrong number." So they called my aunt called and she was like, what happened?" And they told her and she was crying and she told my mom, she's like, "It's true, your Christian is in the hospital. How fast can you get up there?" My mom's like, this isn't happening. And she came up here in disbelief. And at first it was my mom and my aunt who came up here. And later on it was my brother who was in the Marine Corps at the time. That's actually funny the way he got up here because when he got up to Alaska, he was in shorts and a tee and a backpack. That's it. And they're like, we need to get you some gear right away, you know. And later on, my dad came up, but it was mostly them who felt and who saw my condition because, to be honest, I wasn't even conscious.
So after that, and obviously, we felt bad for your brother, going up there just on a limb with the
Yeah,
wrong clothes. I just in my head, I can't help but visualize him just looking at them and saying, "I'm a Marine. I can handle the cold weather."
yeah, yes, sir.
So the follow up question for you, because this is kind of a serious story, right? But obviously, this is something that you have grown from, something that your family is somewhat healed from. That you needed help to get out of this, right? So a brain aneurysm is a serious enough condition that the Air Force is going to consider whether or not that you can still be on the active duty roster. So tell me how that process went.
It's actually interesting you say that. When I finally had consciousness again, I was actually transferred from Providential Hospital in Alaska to Hines VA Hospital, which is near where I live in Chicago. And that's where my rehabilitation happened, and that's where the miracles happened. Because I lost the ability to walk, talk, and eat. When it came to talking, the doctor told me, "Ma'am, son, he doesn't respond to any therapy. He doesn't move his tongue. He may never talk again." And my mom, she listened and she nodded her head. When she came back to the room, she went up to me. She's like, "Christian, God already healed you. When it starts small words, yes, no," but in Spanish. I don't know what it was. Maybe it's because of the language I grew up with. I don't know what it was, but I responded. When she said, "See, no." For the first 2 weeks, I didn't respond. But after like about a couple weeks, I responded. "See, no. See, no." She was amazed. She told the nurse right away. Nurse, you gotta come say, "See, no. See, no." The nurse was like, "Oh!" She was amazed because the doctor had told her as well that I would never speak. So, this is kind of the part where I walk in miracles, literally walk in miracles. Because when it came to walking, I couldn't even stand. They had to tie me to a harness and attach it to the ceiling in order to simulate standing. and I walked. I learned to walk. It was a miracle. And same with eating. With eating, it's kind of funny because when I held my fork, I would bring it to my ear every time. But I learned it was a miracle. And so that's how. But when it comes to the staying in or out of the military, they're actually gonna return me to duty because my my rehabilitation was so successful. But get this, in 2017, they found another vein that had potential rupturing. So what they did was they would do radiation to zap the vein to prevent further damage. Well, in the angiogram, the the screening portion of the examination to locate it so they can zap it, something went wrong. An air bubble got in the contrast fluid. And what that does is that causes damage. And in my case, it caused me to have a stroke. And again, I couldn't walk. After that incident, they decided to medically retire me from the Air Force because, aneurysm and stroke, it's kind of a lot. And with the stroke, my whole right side of my body was non-functional. And but I learned to walk all over again. It was a miracle because they thought I needed an apparatus on my leg. Because every time I would try to walk, I would kick out so badly with my leg, but I didn't need it because I serve a powerful God, and and I have amazing family and amazing Air Force family that is there to support me.
No, I appreciate that perspective and you sharing that portion of your story. I know that's not it's not the easiest thing to talk about, but what I can tell you is easy is pointing out that there's not much more on this planet that is stronger than a mother's love
Oh,
or her yelling at you.
definitely. I,
Yeah.
I definitely agree. And my mother, she's amazing, but yeah, like you said, she can be a little scary. Yeah,
Yep. Yep. I think a motivated, loving mother can probably get you to do anything that you don't want to do.
yes,
So,
sir.
another follow up question for you, my good friend, is that since then, since medically retiring from the Air Force, you have become a much more vocal member of the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program. It's easy. Like if we see you in person, you do have a slight tremor, as you told me about, that's visible, right? So you're not walking as smoothly as you want to just yet. But coming from where you were, where the doc said that you wouldn't even be able to walk at all or use different parts of your body, I mean, how do you feel? Like, how do you feel today in 2021?
It's actually funny you say that because when it comes to being an ambassador, it's actually interesting how I became one. Because so the event that in 2019 that they held was at Scott Air Force Base, which was in the vicinity of where nearby where I live. So I was able to go to that event. I actually went there for sports. I went there for sports, but I had an urge. I had something inside me that wanted to come out, and I told Walmart, I'm like, well, what are the chances of me being able to go tell my story? And Wall was like, I can get you there right away. And I told my story once, and I was a trained ambassador. I got a certificate as an ambassador, and it has not substance. Ever since that day, I have gone to plenty of care events as an ambassador, and not only do I help the ambassador class, but also speak around the base, and it's really amazing to be able to tell my story because there's a freeing factor, a freeing liberating factor that you get when you tell your story because you it's like you relive everything that you've been through and you're like, wow, I did that. I went through that. What? And it's amazing. And that's how I became ambassador. And ever since I've been so grateful. I've been retired ever since, but the Air Force Wounded Warrior Program, they continue to involve me, and it's amazing.
So, as far as the support that you've received from the AFW2 program itself, how do you feel that you've been have you been given access to all the programs that you need? Did you ever feel like you were at a loss for support, or obviously, since we're sharing stories right now, was it similar to mine in that they kept reaching out to the point where it's almost like they were family themselves?
So let me tell you about AFW2 in my life because they've done amazing things. When I was in Alaska, Mr. Johnny Hernandez, the RCC up in Alaska. He was there with my mom every single day, 2 times a day, just to be there and to if she needed anybody, any translating or anything, he would be the person to do that. And they were amazing. When I was back home in Chicago, my RCC was Jennifer Welch, and she was fantastic. She did a home visit to see where I lived, and my parents cooked her a mean dinner, like a really good dinner, let me tell you. And she brought the Air Force band to play for me, and she was overall amazing. And and the support that I've had ever since I retired, having the AFW2 involve me in outreach is amazing. And I'm so thankful, and I don't have any words to describe how thankful I am for the AFW2. They're like I said before, they're basically family.
Obviously I share your feelings in that, and good information for people to know as they're tuned in today, watching this live video feed, and or if it's recorded and they're watching it a little bit later, that AFW2 can help you get returned to duty if that's what's in the cards for you. But if you do happen to separate from the Air Force and or get medically retired, the support doesn't stop there. I think that's pretty cool. I mean, what do you think, Christian?
I think it's amazing. It's a program that goes above beyond their call, and I have I don't have enough words to describe how thankful I am for the AFW2.
So my last way to kind of round off this conversation is, you give your ambassador testimony to folks around different installations and around the Air Force. What is the message that you'd like to get across that comes from you, Christian Vega?
My message is that no matter how hard it gets, no matter how what the obstacles are, no matter what the thing that's in front of you is, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always a way around it, and you should always keep fighting. You should always keep going forward, move forward, because life is honestly too short to stop where you're at. You need to keep moving forward.
I appreciate it. And I appreciate you joining me today. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Ambassador Talk. If you are interested in signing up for the program yourself and or referring a friend to it, please head over to woundedwarrior.af.mil. My name's Jason David. We'll see you guys next week.